Hi everybody, welcome back to another Books and Looks video. I'm Jen, and if you're new here, thank you so much for coming to watch my videos. I make videos that combine traditional get ready with me videos. I put on my makeup and get ready for the day, and book talk videos where I give summaries and reviews of books that I have recently read. If you are returning and watching more videos of mine, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming back. I hope that means that you enjoy my videos. You like hearing about books, you like seeing makeup, or for whatever reason, I appreciate you coming back. And if you are new here, please like the video, subscribe, add some comments, let me know this is your first video. Yeah, and I guess with that, let's talk about a book. Oh, before we do, I got these doodads, and they are actually really cool. I feel like super official. Like, I'm an official YouTuber. Get ready with me, YouTuber. Look at me doing this with my hair to keep it out of my face. Oh my gosh, it's so cool. Am I not the coolest person ever now? That's what I thought. Anywho, the book I am talking about today is The Astonishing Life of August March, and I bought this at the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair completely spontaneously. They have a little bookshop there, and I like to peruse, and it was only $9, and I loved the cover, and of course the blurb also made it interesting. So I bought it, and I just read it. I really enjoyed it. It's not my typical genre. Obviously, a couple of characters die, but it's not like a murder mystery like I usually read and enjoy. Instead, this is literally about this kid, August March, and it's literally about his life. And basically, August, it was born in a theater. His mom was an actress and she didn't want the baby, so she gave birth at work in the theater in, like, I don't remember, the early 1900s, or like 19, it was between World War I and World War II is when August was born. I don't remember the exact whatever. So I want to say the early 30s, but that's not important. So he's born and she doesn't want him, so she literally just like leaves him in the hamper and like runs off and leaves. Well, the seamstress, the laundress, the lady who works for the theater who like does the laundry and takes care of all the clothes and mending the costumes and whatnot, she was like, this 80-year-old woman or 90-year-old woman who had worked in the theater forever, and she finds the baby and she's like, oh my gosh, we need to do something for this baby. Well, she doesn't say she kind of falls in love with the baby, but because she's like so old, she's like, well, I don't want a baby. This is pretty much gone. I don't want a baby, but I'll take care of it. So while she doesn't like take it home or claim it as her own, what she does do is decide to take care of it and just keep it hidden in the theater. So this baby is essentially raised in the theater with no parents, and she keeps it secret for whatever reason. She's like, I can't tell anybody about this. They'll take him away. He'll live in an orphanage, whatever. And she doesn't want that. She wants him for herself, but not to like take home and take care of. So over the next 10-ish years, this lady, this old woman, her name was Eugenia Butler. They call it, August called her Miss Butler, and she named him August March. I don't remember why. I think it was like totally random. Like, she picked up the paper, and I don't know. And it was, I don't know. He was born in April. I do remember that, but I digress. So she like basically like brings him food and toys and books, and he just hides in the theater, and nobody notices him because everybody, as it says in the book, everybody in the theater is so self-absorbed and so focused on the show that they don't notice a kid wandering around. And a couple of the people who do notice a kid wandering around, they think it's like a ghost because actors are so superstitious, blah, 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 blah. So August grows up in the theater. He learns to read by reading scripts. He learns all about like theater and whatnot. But he doesn't learn like any math or history or social studies or anything. He literally only knows like reading, writing, theater, things like that. But he's like this crazy, ridiculous vocabulary. And eventually one of these really good famous actors who works there, his name was Reginald, and he played like King Lear, like he always got the leads in all of these excellent plays, right? He notices August and starts talking to him, and August is like in love with this guy. He's like, oh my gosh, he's like 6 or 7 at this point. He's like the best actor, and he's so good at what he does, and he's like in awe. So he ends up meeting Reginald, and Reginald figures out like who he is and where he came from and whatnot, because Miss Butler tells him like, oh, I found him here, please don't take him away from me, blah blah blah. So Reginald kind of becomes a de facto father to him, and every time he's in town or doing a theater show, he's like hanging out with August and talking to him, and he starts teaching him math and history, and Reginald is from the UK, so he also teaches him like world history. So August gets his education that way through books and through just like watching theater shows and talking to Reginald. Well, fast forward, I already told him, like for 10 years. So 10 years later, like literally the first 10 years of this kid's life, nobody knows he exists except Miss Butler and Reginald. And he just, has his run of the theater. He knows every square inch, nook and cranny. He lives there. And then Miss Butler dies because she's like 100 years old. And he doesn't know what to do. He asks Reginald if he can come live with him. And Reginald's like, well, nobody. I'm sorry, you can't come live with me because I travel a lot and you don't have any papers and I can't adopt you. Like, you don't exist. I don't know what to do. And he's like, honestly, like staying here in the theater is probably your best bet. You know this place. There's food here because of like, not craft services, but that basic idea. And so he's like, all right, fine. Well, not a year or shortly thereafter, the war starts, World War II, and the theater gets shut down because like nobody's going to the theater. Everybody's shuttled off to do stuff for the war, and the theater gets turned into a nightclub for soldiers because this all takes place in New York City. So it turns into a nightclub for soldiers and anybody working the war whenever they like make a pit stop in New York. So again, nobody knows that August lives there, but he starts hanging out at the bar. They just assume he's some kid working there, and he gets food and drink and whatnot, and he like makes it work, right? Well, while he's doing that, this only lasts like 3 years, I think. And he makes friends with this guy who we don't know his real name. He calls himself Seymour, but like it's not his real name. So he makes friends, but he's like a crook. The Seymour guy is like a pickpocket and a con artist, and he teaches August how to like pick locks and be a good pickpocket and be a good con man. And August does this to survive, essentially, because he doesn't have parents, he doesn't have a job. So like pickpocketing and stealing food is how he survives. Well, then shortly after the war ends, they shut down this club, and the owner of the theater, Mr. Barrett, decides he wants to turn the theater into a hotel. So he's going to demolish the theater and build a hotel, because like now it's like the mid 40s and that's what we want to do, right? Like that's where he wants his income to come from. So he does that, but again, nobody knows August exists. So August is just like living in this theater, and in the middle, like it just starts getting demolished because nobody knows he's in there. So they get everybody out, but they don't know August literally is hiding and living in there. So it literally starts being demolished by like wrecking balls and whatnot while August is in there. And so August literally has to run out with nothing. Like he has, accumulated possessions. Like he has clothes and he has books and some gifts that he's gotten from Miss Butler that like now that she has died, are very important to him. Well, unfortunately, he can't take any of that with him because it's, literally being demolished around him. So he manages to escape, but now he literally has nothing. Miss Butler is dead. He doesn't have, a place to live. He's literally got nothing. And he's only ever been outside a handful of times. Like he's literally now it's like 13, 14 years of his life. He's never been outside. Well, he's been outside a handful of times. Miss Butler took him outside a couple of times as like special treats, but she's always like, it's dangerous out there. And that's mainly because she didn't want him to be seen and get taken and put into an orphanage or her to get in trouble for kidnapping. So she kept him hidden in there, right? Well, now it's gone. So now he's like, I don't know, 13, 14, and he has nothing. He doesn't have a home. He doesn't have parents. He doesn't have paperwork, nothing. Nobody in the world knows he exists except Reginald. But at this point, when that was demolished, Reginald was in California filming a movie because he's moved on from theater to movies. And by the time Reginald finds out that it's been demolished and now August has nowhere to go, he comes back from California. And you don't know this as a reader for a little bit, but he comes back to New York and refuses to go anywhere for work. He's like, no, only work in New York, because he wants to stay there and try to find August. He actually really cares about August, and he wants to find August and take care of him. And you also don't know this until later in the story, but Miss Butler actually left August everything. So like she had a house full of like furniture and everything and like some money saved up, and she left it all to August. So Reginald is just trying to find him to like be like, hey. So it's been all these years and August has no idea, because nobody knows August is even alive except Reginald to, give him his inheritance. So now August is living on the streets, and he's like, what am I going to do? Well, luckily he learned how to pickpocket. He learned how to do all this stuff, and he bumps into Seymour. And he's like, Seymour, oh my gosh, like, you know who I am. I'm the one that like helped you hook that girl that one night, and he ended up marrying her. And so Seymour's like, all right, you can be part of my little group, right? Well, he becomes part of Seymour's little group, but Seymour's little group is all criminals. Like, they're pickpockets, they're con men, they're thieves. They're big thieves. But that is right up his alley, because August has pretty much always been living a lie and stealing food and trying to, just survive. So it works out really well. He's actually really good at it. He's sneaky. He is really good at like climbing, because he grew up in the theater. So he's really good at climbing and whatnot, all over the theater, because he would, climb up to the catwalk, and he's like not afraid of heights, and he's good at getting into nooks and crannies and staying out of the way. And so he ends up being a really, really good part of this thieving group. And he always gets like a cut of whatever they thieve. So August gets himself an apartment. He's like, 14 years old. And this lasts like, I don't know, a couple of years, maybe a year or two. And then in the meantime, he, well, no, not in the meantime. So like a year or two go by, and he's a thief. He's a good thief. He's making money. He never really takes more than he needs. Like, he pays his rent. He gets himself food. He gets the minimum to survive, right? So he's actually like a pretty good guy for being a criminal. But like, what choice does he have, right? Well, like a year or two go by. I think it was only like a year. And out of the blue, oh, that's right, a cop finds him and is like, are you August March? And it says August March. And August is like, none of your business, and runs away, because he thinks he's going to be like arrested and get in trouble. But here, what it was Reginald had been searching for him this whole time. Remember, he stayed in New York to try to find him, and he wouldn't take jobs elsewhere because he was looking for August. And he had some like police friend that he was asking to help find him as well. Like, this is what he looks like. I need to find him. So the cops have been looking for him, but not the way August thinks. They've been looking for him to like get him home, essentially, to Reginald. I don't remember how. I think August gets arrested. Yeah, I think August actually ends up arrested, but not because he does anything bad, but because the cops are looking for him on behalf of Reginald. And then Reginald comes in and gets him. And at first, August is like, who are you? Why are you here? And then he's like, oh my gosh, you're Reginald. You're like the only father figure I ever knew. And he's like, I have been looking for you for years. They get some food, and then they go to Miss Butler's old house. And Reginald tells him everything. Like, listen, I've been in New York this whole time searching for you. When Miss Butler died, she left you everything. This house is yours. All the furniture in here is yours. And Reginald has been living there, so it's like stocked with food. It's got clothes, everything. And so now he has a home, Reginald is there, like things are looking up. And so he gives up his life of crime. And what is he? Oh, he because he got this big inheritance from his butler, he doesn't need to work, at least for a while. But Reginald realizes he never had an education, so he needs to get an education. So he has a friend who works, who's the headmaster of an all boys school in in upstate New York. So Reginald pulls in a favor and gets him to go to the school. Oh, I forgot a little detail that turned out to be important. When he was living on the streets, he would just like wander around sometimes before he got set up with Seymour and found himself an apartment. He literally lived on the streets, and he noticed this one house that he noticed in the window had this beautiful family, the mom, the dad, and a daughter, and he thought the daughter was like beautiful. She was like maybe a year older than him. They were both like 13-ish. And he's like, that's what I want. Why can't I have a family and a place to call home and like safety and security? And he would like go there all the time and look. And this little girl noticed him, and maybe kind of came like through the window friends. And they were like wave at each other and smile at each other. And so that detail comes back. So now he goes to the boys' school, right? And he isn't really great. Like, he likes to learn, and he likes education and learning, but he's never been in a place where he has to like follow rules or follow a routine or anything like that. He's literally always been independent from the day he was born. He took care of himself. So he struggles a lot to adjust to this boarding school, but he does okay. It's all rich people, so he's not like, he doesn't fit in, but he does okay. And it turns out that in order to like keep him out of trouble, the headmaster decides to make him in charge of the annual Shakespeare play. So every year, well, for only like 2 or 3 years, he is in charge of the Shakespeare play, and he does a phenomenal job. Like, people come from all over to see his plays once they find out how amazing he is. He does everything from the casting. He edits the scripts. He like oversees the set. He's literally overseeing everything. I think I want to change to a slightly darker color. Excuse me while I dig. Okay. Nope, that's not it. There it is. So he does really, really well. He eventually graduates, and in the meantime, he and Reginald grow closer and closer. They're like very much like father-son, or at the very least uncle-nephew relationship. Like, they grow really close. And then once he graduates from this boarding school, he's like, ready to get a job. But actually, right... Yes, okay, so he graduates, and then Reginald takes the summer off with him, and they spend like a summer just hanging out, having a good time. Reginald is fairly rich because he's been in movies. August inherited all of Mrs. Butler's everything, and he like sells stuff off occasionally for money. Plus, he still like steals a little bit here and there to make ends meet. He's a really good petty thief. Well, at the end of the summer, Reginald gets a job in the UK in this movie. And so Reginald goes back to the UK. He's like, I'll be, 3 months or 4 months, however long it takes to film this, blah, blah, blah. And unfortunately, while he's over there filming, he dies. Just like, he's older. Nothing bad happens. He just dies. And when the letter reaches August saying, that Reginald has passed away, and he also has left everything to you. So he inherited everything again, a large sum of money, so all of his effects. And since he was an actor, there was like a trunk full of like costumes and makeup and prosthetics and wigs and everything. So he's like looking through it, and he's like getting sad. He doesn't know what to do with himself. So he basically becomes an alcoholic temporarily, because it only lasts like 6 months. And, I forgot another detail. So remember the little girl. When he was at the all-boys boarding school, there was like an all-girls boarding school down the street. And because of how he was, his upbringing, he would never like to stay and just like hang out in his room, or he never made friends with all these rich hoity-toity boys. So he would sneak out and just go like walk around town. And one time he bumped into this teenager who went to school at the girls' school, and comes to find out it's the girl with the curly hair that he met through the window, that they would like wave to each other through the window. And they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's such a small world. We ran into each other. Oh, I'm August. I'm Penny. It's so nice to meet you. But that it was literally like a half-hour meeting, because then the chaperone shows up and is like, what are you doing out of curfew? And they like run off and, you know. So now, again, back to where we are in the story. So Reginald is dead. He gains everything. He becomes an alcoholic because he's sad and depressed, because now literally he has no one. So he doesn't know what to do. So he eventually is like, I can't do this forever. I can't live off of this forever. I'm going to need to do something, but he has no skills to like do a job or whatever. So he decides to get into crime, but he's like, pickpocketing and petty thievery is not really what I want to do. And then he realizes that he got all of those costumes and things from Reginald, so he decides to become a con artist. And he remembers all of his friends who were like super duper rich, and they would talk about like how they have all this stuff and it's not even that important to them, and da da da. And he's like, well, that's not fair. So he decides he's going to like catch up with his old friends, like, hey, let's have a drink, let's catch up for old time's sake. And he doesn't want to rob his friends, so he asks his friends about like their friends or their family members who were like, oh, well, this is the weekend of the regatta, everybody's gonna be up in blah blah blah, up in Jersey or whatever. And so he would find out who was wealthy and when they were going to be gone, and then he would break into their houses while they were away and steal like a random this or that was worth a lot more than just like a wallet or petty thievery, but also not so much that would really be a big deal for these really wealthy people. Like he would steal like a diamond necklace and then sell it, and then he'd be good for like a month, right? So he does this for years, literally like a decade. So when he graduated high school, he was like 18. And then the book fasts forward and basically says like he did this for a decade. Okay, so now he's like in his late 20s, early 30s. He's quite successful with his little racket of, you know, going to the fancy rich people places and finding a mark and then just listening and then breaking it and stealing random jewelry or whatever, or like paintings or golden cups or whatever. So now he's like 30-ish. We don't know how old he is. He doesn't know how old he is. And he is working a job in somewhere in New York City, because he lives in New York City. And he has been like working this old man and like befriending him, and eventually gets invited to this fancy dinner party. And he goes to this fancy dinner party on costume. This rich guy thinks his name is Simon, but it's actually August. And he's acting like Simon, and he's an aspiring artist, and he's there to like find something to draw for his next like set of paintings or whatever. And so he's getting a tour of the place because this rich guy is like, ooh, my home and my life is going to be an artist's muse. So he's like this, you know, egotistical rich guy, and he's literally showing the guy around showing Simon/August around the house. And really, August is casing the joint, figuring out like where the good stuff is, where can he get in, how can he maneuver his way around, learning the layout of a house so that whenever this rich guy goes on like a weekend getaway or, you know, goes to spend a month in Paris, he can break in and steal stuff. Well, unbeknownst to him, there is another con artist there, this woman, I forget her name. Elizabeth? No. Charlotte? I don't know. But she is wooing the guy too. And at the time, he doesn't realize she's also another con artist. He thinks she's like so good. He thinks she's literally like this stupid woman who's his side piece, who's like just really dumb and like airheaded and just like, oh, that's so cool. Oh my gosh, look at that painting of the puppy, or, you know, that stupid stuff. But really, she was a con artist, and she was doing the exact same thing that August was doing, casing the joint and using her con of being like an airhead woman to seduce him and get him to like let his guard down. And, you know, she was gonna also come back sometime and steal stuff. Well, a couple of weeks go by, he's, you know, working it up, and then he finally gets the opportunity to break in and steal this like emerald or something. Well, he tries to break it, or he successfully breaks in, because he saw the guy, and the guy was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be going on a, you know, weekend getaway with my wife, blah blah blah. Well, as it turns out, he wasn't actually going on a weekend getaway with his wife. It was all a ruse because he was having an affair with that dumb blonde, and he went away with his wife for the weekend, but then had to go back to the house because he forgot something. When really he went back to the house to have an affair with this dumb blonde. Actually, she was a redhead. I apologize for being blonde prejudice. Anyway, so he breaks in, and at the same time, the dumb girl and the guy were there having their little affair, and he almost gets caught, but she saves him and like figured, she knows what he's there for, like, because she's not actually a dumb blonde. As I said, she's a con artist too. And so they both almost get caught because he breaks in the midst of her doing her thing. And they just narrowly escape, and then they get to talking because he's like, my house is just over here, run with me, you can hide out at my house, blah blah blah, they're gonna call the cops. And then she like takes off a wig and takes off all these prosthetics, and so does he. And then they realize that they're like both basically the same thing, con artists that like put on costumes and whatnot. And so they decide, let's work together, like we're good at this. But while they're talking about combining their superpowers for their own good, they realize it's the girl from the window, the girl from school, and now they're like both con artists. And he's like, I thought you were like rich and had a beautiful family, like why are you doing this? And she's like, well, my dad left me and my mom and started a new family, and then when he died, neither of us were in the will. My mom died shortly after. Dad left us of a broken heart, and I've been on my own ever since, and this is what I do to survive. Okay. August tells her his story. She doesn't believe him at first, but then like eventually does. So now like he has a friend. He falls in love with her. Of course. They're doing these jobs together where she, instead of having to like sleep with men and then like while they're sleeping, she gets up in the middle of the night, robs them blind, and then leaves. She's like, I don't like doing that. So instead, she goes out on dates with guys, single men, and then like while they're out, August knows the place is going to be empty, or at least much easier to break into, and so that's their ruse, right? She seduces a guy, they go out, she gets some intel for August, and then like on a second date or a third date or whatever, she's out with him, and then he sneaks in and steals stuff. And they never steal anything like that much. They'll steal like a thing or two so that it's not as noticeable and also not as detrimental. And they never get caught. This goes on for several years. They're very successful. They're living together. Oh, no, she has her own place. They're like, he's completely in love, right? And then she decides their next mark is going to be Mr. Barrett. Do you remember him? He was the owner of the theater. He almost killed August unknowingly when he demolished it and turned it into a hotel. He hates Mr. Barrett because Mr. Barrett like destroyed everything and made him be like homeless on the street, have to become a pickpocket to survive when he was like 13. So he hates this man. He wants nothing more than to get revenge. But he's like, no, I don't want to touch that. I just want to hate him from afar. And she's like, dude, this is a good mark. Like this could be the last one we ever do, right? And so they start the process, and she's seducing him and getting him to want her to be his girlfriend so that they can, do their con. Well, it goes really, really well, except he's like, I don't remember, something like he slips backwards and like he doesn't really want to see her anymore or something. So she decides, August, you're going to have to pretend to be my fiance to make him jealous. And so they go out to a place where they know Mr. Barrett is going to be, and he proposes to her, and she says yes. And Mr. Barrett is like devastated because he's like, I thought you were my girl, and da 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 da. So she's acting this whole time. She's got on like this long blonde wig, and she's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize you were in love with me, blah blah blah. Well, so they she and Mr. Barrett run off giggling, and August, who's pretending to be like I don't remember what fake name he made up, he's just there like devastated, right? So he acts the part, acts all devastated, but he actually is devastated because he's in love with her, and he just watched her run off like kissing and smooching with Mr. Barrett, his mortal enemy, right? Well, instead of her coming home later that night, she disappears for a week, and he's devastated. He's like, she actually left me for this man. This is not a con anymore. She actually left me for this man. He gets a week later, he gets a letter saying, so we went to Paris, sit tight, we got married, trust me, it's going to be fine. But he's devastated. He's like, what? She married this guy? And what time is it? Okay. She married him. He's like absolutely devastated. Understandably so, right? Well, again, like, I don't know, a month goes by or so, and he just like drinks himself into a stupor. He's literally drunk for 24/7 for like a month because he's devastated that she left him and married Mr. Barrett. Well, she sent him a note and was like, hey, we came back, we're in New York City, come to the Barrett Hotel, we're staying in the penthouse. So he goes up to see her. It's just the two of them, they're talking. She's like, listen, he does not know who I am at all. I'm still in character. I've gotten him to totally love me. We're married, so I'm going to divorce him, take half his stuff. Like, there was no prenup. There's, like, I found all the loopholes. Like, this is going to happen. I'm going to get half of his stuff. He's like, I don't like it. Like, I love you. Like, this is not good. And she's like, don't you get it? I love you too. That's why I'm doing this. And then they both confess and they love each other. But in just that moment, Mr. Barrett comes in and is like, what is going on in here? But August, remember when he was a kid and there was a story that the theater was haunted by a boy? It was him, right? So he knew how to play the ghost part. And Mr. Barrett, he also knew from some of his, interactions with him when he lived in the theater, believes in ghosts and is like totally afraid of ghosts. So August just decides, like, I'm gonna act like a ghost. Ooh, I'm the theater ghost from years ago. You tore down my theater and I'm coming to get you. And Mr. Barrett, like, freaks out and he goes to run away and August is chasing him around the room like, ooh. And sorry. Anyway, in the chaos, Mr. Barrett falls out the window, and they're in the penthouse, so he falls out the window and he lands and dies. And so August and Penny are like, oh shit. So August hurries up and hightails it out of there, and Penny's like, I'm gonna have to play the part of like the grieving widow. I can do nothing to make it, like, there can be zero suspicion. So for, again, like, months, she has to play the part of the grieving widow, go through all the paperwork, like she can't contact August because that'll look suspicious, right? So August, again, is like devastated, like, oh my gosh, what happened? This is not how it was supposed to go. What am I gonna do? And he falls into drink again. And a couple of months goes by. And then Penny finally reaches out again and is like, hey, and it's all kind of like in code. Because, again, like, they don't want to arouse suspicion. It's literally been like 6 months. So she inherits everything. She's a millionaire. She owns the hotel. She owns several houses, all the cars, everything. She's like a multimillionaire. And by this point, it's like the 60s, I want to say. Yeah, it's the 60s because he's like in his 30s. It's like the 60s. And she's like a multimillionaire because she married the guy, he died, and they've decided that it was a complete accident. Like, she made up a story, it was believable, so there's, like, no suspicion of foul play. He just fell out the window. They were, like, hanky-pankying or whatever. And so she gets everything. And then she finally reaches out to August and is like, everything's settled. I have a gift for you. She gives him the deed to the hotel, and she's like, no. She doesn't give him the deed to the hotel. I'm sorry. She's demolishing the hotel, and she gives him the deed to the land where the hotel was, and like, I don't know, $100,000 or something to build a new theater there. So he like comes out of his drunken stupor, and he finally has like a purpose for life again. He oversees the demolition of the hotel, and it's like so cathartic for him. He rebuilds a theater from scratch, and he names it the Butler after his mom, Miss Butler. And on the opening show is King Lear, which was the first show that he met Reginald and like realized how much he loved Shakespeare and how much he loved Reginald and blah blah blah. And he's the owner. He starts writing his own scripts. He's directing plays. He doesn't act, but he's directing, he's producing. He basically has a legitimate career with this theater. And then after like a year of like all of this, he's thinking like, I'll never have Penny again. Like the way this all went down, there's no way we can be together, right? Well, at the very, very end, he gets a phone call while he's in his office in the theater working. He's reviewing scripts for the next show. And the phone rings and he picks it up and it's Penny. And it's cute because anytime they would start a new con job, she would call and be like, hey, I have an idea. And he would say, tell me everything. And then they would start planning it out, right? So whenever he gets the phone call, he hasn't heard from her in like a year other than like a letter here and there. And she's like, hey, I have an idea. And he says, tell me everything. And that's how the story ends. So it is implied that they get together. They spend the rest of their lives happily. He has his theater. She has tons of money from the Barrett fortune. And they live happily ever after. It was a very good book. The only thing I would suggest, I would give it 8 out of 10 stars. And the only thing that I would suggest be different is the beginning half was like the first 10 years of his life. Well, maybe not half, maybe more like a third was like his time in the theater, and then like up until it was demolished. And then like another third was his, actually no, it was probably like half until the thing was demolished and he got set up with Seymour. And then the second half was from like age 13 to like 40 when he was a pickpocket and then a con artist and then working with Penny. And I wish there was more storytelling of his con artist years with Penny because they were together for like, well, I guess only a couple of years, but still, or more time in like his 20s whenever and like when he was in school, like there could have been more story there and less story of his childhood. I mean, I understand the backstory is really important, but I don't know. Me personally, I would have just taken a little bit out of his childhood in the theater and added more storytelling for his like pickpocket years, his school years, and his con artist years, and his Penny years. But I really did like it. I would recommend it. There wasn't any like mystery or intrigue. It was just a story of August March, and it was a really unique and interesting story. And there were tons of theater references. The author is also a playwright and an actor, maybe? I don't know. He is a writer and comedian, and he has written screenplays and stage musicals. He's been on TV, Comedy Central, Funny or Die. So, yeah. He's So he's in the theater, and so there were tons of theater references and then beautiful language because August grew up in the theater, and you think how like it's like Shakespearean language and like all that. So like beautiful language. It was a nice little personality quirk where August would talk really eloquently and very, very loquacious. And so people would be like, August, that's enough. So it was a cute little character trait that I enjoyed in August. So this is my look for today. Oh, wait. There we go. Cute, right? I'm a real get ready with me kind of person, aren't I? All right. That's the end. Great book. Highly recommend it. I've got my basic look today, just my neutrals as usual. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, please give it a like, add some comments below. If you have any look suggestions for me to try in future videos or book recommendations of things you think I might like, add them in the comments below. I love seeing comments come in, and I especially love seeing likes come in and new subscribers come in. So please like, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff. And yeah, so I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you have a fantastic everything, actually. And as always, stay beautiful inside and out. Mwah. Bye.